prosecution of Obama himself, if that be necessary. We've got to put pressure on these folks. As Joe mentioned, I've written a couple of books. We've had 16 published, and most of them are military, either fiction or nonfiction. The last one that came out in the fall, right before the election, was called Kangaroo Court, and it was a look at how the Democrats have used unconstitutional lawfare. They basically bastardized our justice system. You know, if you think about the preamble to the Constitution, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, the very first objective after that is establish justice, and then ensure domestic tranquility, and provide for common defense, and promote the general welfare. But establishing justice is the first objective of forming a more perfect union. And what the Democrats have done, they bastardized our court system, especially our federal court system. I've said this, I wasn't planning on talking about it. You asked the question, but I'll say it anyway. There is not one single prosecution that was brought against President Trump that had any legitimacy whatsoever. I know certain Republican candidates, maybe even running for the United States Senate, maybe even this race, who have called President Trump a convicted felon. Any Republican that calls President Trump a convicted felon should be kicked out of the party. You can tell Jason Simmons I said that. It's absolutely ridiculous. So, but in the book, we look at not just the prosecution of the president, but against other leaders as well. As I mentioned earlier to someone when we were talking, Rick Perry, the former governor of Texas, was prosecuted because he vetoed a bill which the Texas Constitution allows him to do. Y'all may remember Senator Ted Stevens from Alaska. He was the longest serving senator. He was a war hero. He flew C-4s over across the Himalayas in the Indo-China Theater. And they needed that seat when Obama came in. They made up charges against him, prosecuted him, got him convicted. He lost his race by a couple of points. That was overturned within 6 months. The prosecutor who brought the case committed suicide. It was so horrible. But it's not just Kay Bailey Hutchison, the senator from Texas, you know, who was a rising star in the Republican Party, first woman senator from Texas, a Republican. They prosecuted her. But not just political figures. There's a guy named Douglas Mackey that you might remember. This guy was a cartoonist. And what he did in 2016, he lampooned Hillary voters. You know, in other words, make fun of Hillary voters, saying they're pretty stupid. Well, they are stupid if you voted for Hillary. You know, or it's a stupid thing to do. 2016. 5 years later, in 2021, the Biden Justice Department prosecuted him in New York City. The same office that Marine Comey was just fired from prosecuted Douglas Mackey. Not just Douglas Mackey, there were two pro-life fathers. One was Mark Houck from up in Philadelphia. Another was Paul Vaughn in Tennessee, in Nashville. And what happened when Roe versus Wade finally got overturned, the Democrats got so mad, they started going after pro-life fathers. They went after Mark up in Philadelphia. Mark's a Catholic guy. He's got a big men's ministry up there. And his son, who was like a young teenager, was at the abortion clinic. And there was this abortionist guy who came out and started pushing the son. And so Mark went over and suspended the son and said, "Don't push my son," and pushed back. Well, what the Democrats did, they took tape and only showed Mark pushing the abortionist. Well, thank goodness there were live cameras all up and down the street in Philadelphia where the Thomas More Society, which is a pro-life law group, got film and showed that the abortionist had pushed first, and he was acquitted. But that's what the Democrats do. They hide evidence to push an agenda. Poor Paul Vaughn got convicted out in Nashville, but fortunately, he's not going to have to serve any time. There was a 90-something-year-old lady in that group in Nashville, Tennessee, that was prosecuted by the Democrats. All they did was go into that abortion clinic and sing hymns and pray, and the local authorities in both of those cases dismissed the cases. And then you may remember Mark and Patricia McCloskey. Does that name ring a bell to anybody? They were the couple in St. Louis. And when you have these criminal thugs illegally break through an iron gate on their neighborhood, march through their yard, all the McCloskeys did, who used to be Democrats, by the way, they come out in their yard. He's holding an AR. It's not really doing, just holding an AR. I've got a couple of ARs, Sheriff. You know, we believe in the Second Amendment here. We love our sheriffs. And the poor lady, Patricia McCloskey, she's got this revolver, and she's a dingbat. The revolver won't even fire. It's locked. But you know what? Let me tell you something. The prosecutor in that case Kimberly Gardner was elected with George Soros money, okay? And so here's what this criminal prosecutor did. She had her crime lab re-engineer the revolver so it would fire so she could charge the lady with a felony. That is the type of assault that we have been under from these Democrats.